The Woman in the Ditch, a story in 3 parts. The rain came down the way it only does in Montana in late October. Not in drops, but in walls, in the kind of relentless downpour that made the whole world feel like it was being slowly erased. The highway stretched ahead like a dark ribbon, pulled tight between two pieces of nowhere, and the only sound for miles in any direction was the collective thunder of 19 motorcycles cutting through the dark. Cole Harlan rode at the front the way he always did. He had been riding at the front of something for most of his adult life. In the Army, he walked point. In the charter, he led the column. There was something in him that had been built for the forward position, not from arrogance, but from the particular orientation of a man who had learned early that the world went better when somebody capable decided to face it head-on rather than waiting for it to come find them. He was 43 years old. His face showed most of those years and hid the rest. The ones it hid were the ones that mattered. The rain did not bother him. He had ridden through worse. He had lived through worse. His hands on the grips were easy and practiced. The hands of a man who had logged more miles than he could count and had stopped measuring a long time ago. The Iron Hollow Charter ran tight and quiet behind him. 19 men who had learned to communicate in the language of engines and throttle and the small adjustments that meant slow down or watch this or something is wrong, I can feel it. Cole felt it before he saw anything. That was the only honest way to describe what happened. Some instinct older than reason, older than logic, older than anything he could have articulated in the moment, made his right hand squeeze the brake. The column behind him responded immediately, the way 19 men who had ridden together through enough years responded without question and without hesitation, the whole long formation slowing and drawing together like a single breathing thing. His headlights swept across the gravel shoulder, then down into the ditch. He was off his bike before the kickstand hit the asphalt. Later, Rook would ask him what he had seen from the road that made him stop, and Cole would think about it for a long time before answering honestly. The truth was that he had not seen anything clearly from that distance in that rain. Just a shape at the edge of the ditch that his brain had almost filed away as road debris, storm trash, something the weather had pushed out of the fields and deposited at the edge of the highway. Almost. But almost was the operative word. That small gap between almost and certainty was the gap through which everything that followed came pouring. He slid down the wet gravel of the embankment and landed on one knee in the mud. She was there. She was lying with one arm extended up onto the road surface, reaching toward where the headlights were, as if she had been crawling and had run out of strength before she reached them. She was young, somewhere in her late 20s, and she was visibly and heavily pregnant, her belly pressing against the soaked fabric of a dress that had never been intended for a night like this one. Her face was a catalog of damage. A cut above her left eyebrow, still bleeding into the rain. Swelling along her jaw, the particular purple-yellow bloom of a bruise that had not yet decided how bad it was going to get. Her feet were bare. Her bare feet were bleeding from the gravel she had crawled across. Cole knelt beside her and kept his voice low and level, the way he had learned to do in places where panic was the enemy of the person who needed help most. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. Brown eyes, exhausted and wrecked, and carrying something that Cole had seen before, not in women on roadsides, but in men in the aftermath of things they had not been able to stop. That particular look that lived in a person after they had been told enough times and in enough ways that they did not matter. She pulled in a breath that sounded like it cost her everything she had left. "Please," she whispered. "My baby, he left us here." 8 words. 8 words in a voice barely above a breath, soaked in rain, and soaked in something worse than rain. And Cole Harlan felt those 8 words land in his chest like something physical. He had heard men scream on the other side of the world. He had heard things that a person was not supposed to hear and keep living normally afterward. But those 8 words, whispered by a woman lying in a ditch on a Montana highway at midnight, reached somewhere that screaming had never reached. "Your baby is okay," he said. He said it with the certainty you gave to someone who was seconds from falling apart, because the truth could wait and the person could not. Behind him, boots were hitting the asphalt. Rook was already moving, then gauge, then patch. The whole column had stopped engines idling. 19 men standing in the rain watching their captain kneel in the mud beside a woman none of them had ever seen before. "What's your name?" Cole asked. Her eyes found his and held them with the specific, exhausted calculation of someone trying to determine whether she could trust what she was seeing. "Nora," she said. "Nora Vane." He said her name quietly, the way you said a name when you needed a person to understand that they existed and that their existence mattered to someone in the room. "My name is Cole. You are not alone anymore. You understand me? That part is over." Her chin wobbled. Just for a moment. Then she reached out and grabbed his hand and held on the way. A person held on when they had been in the water so long. That solid ground felt almost too good to believe. The baby, she said, her free hand pressed against her belly. She keeps kicking. Is that good? That's very good, Cole said. That means she's fighting. Rook was down the embankment and on her other side with the economy of movement that came from 8 years as a combat medic. 6'3", built like a man who had carried heavy things for most of his life, with a scar through his left eyebrow, and the gentlest voice Cole had ever heard from someone capable of putting another man through a wall. His hands moved over Nora with a practiced assessment that was entirely gentle. Cole looked up at the men on the road. Found Gage. Clear the truck, Cole said. We're loading her in. Nobody argued. Nobody asked questions. Gage was already moving. Cole stayed where he was on one knee in the mud, hands still in Nora's, and talked to her in the way he had learned mattered most in moments like this. Not wisdom, not information, just presence. Just the steady sound of a voice that was not going anywhere. They got her up carefully, Cole and Rook on either side, and she gasped once when they lifted her, and every muscle in her body tensed against the pain. And Cole said, I've got you, with the same voice he had used for men in different kinds of ditches in different parts of the world. And they moved up the embankment and got her into the truck. Rook drove. Cole rode in the truck bed with Nora, one hand still in hers, the rain hammering the metal above them, in a sound that was almost like white noise, almost like peace, almost like something that blotted out everything outside this particular space. Ridgewater County Hospital was 40 minutes out on a good night. Cole intended to be there in considerably less. In the truck in the dark, Nora talked. She talked about the baby first, which told him something about what she valued and what she had been holding on to through whatever had happened on Route 9 tonight. She had been calling the baby she from the beginning, and after a while she explained why. She had known the sex for months and had been keeping it to herself like something that could not be touched by the life around it. A daughter. I was going to name her Lily, Nora said. And her voice changed on those 5 words in a way that everything else she had said had not changed. Something fierce and clean came through the exhaustion, something that had been surviving underneath everything else. After my grandmother, she was the only person in my life who ever made me feel like I was actually worth something. Cole said nothing. He understood what was being left unspoken. Derek hated the name, she said. He said it sounded like something people name their cats. A pause. He had opinions about a lot of things. What I wore, who I talked to, how I laughed. The way she said that last part was flat and matter-of-fact in the specific way of someone who had processed something so many times it no longer surprised them, but had not stopped being true. He had opinions about how I laughed, and after a while it was just easier to stop. You learn to move around it, like weather. You learn to predict it and step out of its path, and eventually you stop seeing it as something that can change because it doesn't. The truck moved through the rain. What happened tonight? Cole asked. She was quiet for long enough that he thought she might not be ready to answer. Then she told him. She had been in the car. Derek had been driving, had been agitated for days. Not just tonight, but for a stretch of days that she had been navigating carefully the way she navigated everything in her life with him, with her peripheral vision constantly tracking the small signs that told her when something was getting worse. He had pulled over on Route 9 and told her to get out, said she was dead weight, said she was slowing everything down, that she was always needing something, always being a problem, always making things harder than they had to be. He stopped the car first, she said. It wasn't fully moving. He stopped and then he told me to get out and she stopped. Started again. I got out. I didn't even argue. I just opened the door and stepped down because by that point I had been so trained to do what he said that I did it without even thinking about whether I should. She looked at her hand in Cole's. He drove away. I stood there in the rain for about 30 seconds thinking he was going to turn around. Because that is what you always think. You always think they're going to turn around. Her voice was very even. He didn't turn around. Cole's jaw was tight. He kept his voice level. Keeping his voice level was a deliberate act that cost him something real. How long were you in the ditch? I don't know. A long time. I couldn't get back up the embankment. Every time I tried. She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't need to. Cole thought about the car driving away, about 30 seconds of waiting in the rain, about the particular kind of courage it took to crawl toward a road with no certainty that anyone was coming. Tell me about Lily, he said. She looked at him. Then something in her face shifted, and she started talking about her daughter the way she had talked about her name, with that fierce, clean thing underneath everything else. And Cole listened, and the truck moved through the dark toward Ridgewater County Hospital. But to understand why Cole Harlan had stopped his bike on Route 9 that night, to understand why those 8 words had landed where they did, you had to go back further than the highway. Just 24 hours. Not far, but far enough. 24 hours earlier, Cole had been sitting in the back corner of a roadside diner outside Billings, drinking coffee that had been hot once, and watching the door the way he always watched doors. It was a habit, one of several. He sat with his back to the wall in every room he entered, positioned where he could see all the exits, kept his hands where he could move them quickly. These were not choices exactly. They were what 2 tours in Afghanistan had deposited in him so deeply that they had become geology rather than behavior, the shape of who he was now. The Iron Hollow Charter was spread through the diner in the small clusters of men who had spent enough time together to develop preferences about booth positions and sight lines and which waitresses would leave them alone without being unpleasant about it. They were not saints. Nobody who wore that patch was going to stand in front of a congregation and claim otherwise. But they had a code forged over years of writing and working and standing beside each other in moments that revealed what a man was actually made of, and it was real in the way that codes forged in pressure were real. You did not abandon your own. You did not leave the vulnerable to bleed in the dark. You did not walk away from something that needed you just because walking away was easier. And your own was not limited to the men who wore your patch. Your own was anyone who needed you badly enough to reach toward the light. Cole had been given that understanding by a man named Walt Deering, who had captained the Iron Hollow Charter before Cole, and who had told him that the most important thing about a code was not following it when it cost you nothing, but following it when it cost you something real. Walt was gone now. 3 years. But the things he had said were not gone and would not be. Cole was thinking about Walt that evening in the diner, sitting with his cold coffee, not for any reason he could identify. Sometimes the dead came and sat with you without being invited. That was one of the things no one told you before you started losing people. You did not get to control when you thought about them. They arrived when they arrived. All you could do was make room. He was also thinking about something older, something he rarely let himself revisit, but that never fully went away. He had been 17 the first time he found himself in a room where he had nothing left. The particulars of how he got there were not important. What was important was the room itself, a hospital room in Bozeman, late at night, the institutional green of the walls, and the smell of antiseptic, and the deep silence of a place where difficult things happened on a regular schedule. He had been alone, and then a man had come in and sat down in the chair beside his bed. Not a relative, not a doctor, not anyone with a professional reason to be there. A man who had been in the hallway when Cole was there and had seen something in the young man's face and had made a decision that he did not have to make. He sat down. He stayed. For 4 hours he sat in that chair without leaving, and he did not say much because much did not need to be said. What needed to be said was communicated by the act of staying itself, which told Cole everything that words were not adequate to deliver, which was this: you are worth staying for. The man's name was Walt Deering. Cole finished his cold coffee and set the cup down and did not say any of this out loud to the room full of men around him because it was not the kind of thing he said out loud. But he thought it, and he felt the shape of it sitting in him, the way old things sat, not painfully, not happily, just solidly, like furniture you had lived with long enough that you stopped noticing it was there until the light caught it at a certain angle. Rook slid into the booth across from him. "We rolling at 10? 11. Gage needs to look at the intake on the dyna." Rook nodded. He looked at Cole for a moment with the attentiveness of a man who had spent years reading vital signs, not just physical ones. "You're somewhere else tonight." "I'm right here, physically." Rook picked up the coffee cup, looked at it, set it down. "Route, Ridgewater County. Straight run down Route 9 if the weather holds." They both looked out at the sky, which had been building towards something all afternoon with the patience of something that had decided it was going to arrive, regardless of whether anyone was ready. "Weather's not holding," Rook said. "No," Cole agreed. "It's not." They had been on the road for 2 hours when Cole's hand found the brake. The truck turned into the Ridgewater County Hospital parking lot, and the back doors opened and the nurses were already at the bay. Someone had called ahead and Nora was on a gurney before Cole had both feet on the ground. Her hand slipped out of his as the gurney moved, and she turned her head back and found him in the lights and the rain. "Don't leave," she said. Not a demand, not a request exactly. The statement of someone who had run completely out of things to protect themselves with and was simply saying what was true in the most stripped-down way possible. "I'll be right here," Cole said. He meant it. He always meant it when he said it, but he meant it with more weight than usual because of the way she had said, "Don't leave," because of what it said about how long it had been since anyone had stayed. The doors closed behind her. Cole stood in the parking lot in the rain and let himself feel the thing he had been deliberately not feeling for the last 40 minutes, the rage that had been building in the back of his chest like a coal since the moment he understood what had been done to Nora Vane. He stood with it for exactly as long as he needed to. Then he compressed it into something that could be used later and walked through the double doors. The waiting room was the particular kind of quiet that existed in emergency rooms at midnight. Plastic chairs, a vending machine humming with the diligence of something that had no concept of the hour, a television on the wall showing a weather forecast that was optimistic about tomorrow in a way the current sky made almost insulting. A nurse at the desk looked up when Cole walked in, did the involuntary assessment that people always did, the jacket and the patch, and the way he moved through space, and then looked back down at her computer because he was calm and quiet and there was nothing to object to. He sat down, he folded his hands. He was going to wait. 20 minutes later, a young woman came through the double doors with the competent and slightly exhausted bearing of someone who worked nights in a county emergency room and had arrived at a relationship with human suffering that was not callous but was honest. She stopped when she saw Cole, did her assessment. "You're here for the woman they brought in." "Yes. Are you family?" Cole paused. "I'm the one who found her." The doctor studied him with the expression of someone running a calculation she did not have enough variables for. Then she moved past it. "She's stable," the doctor said. "The baby is stable. We're keeping her overnight, possibly longer." She paused in the specific way of someone making sure the next words would land correctly. "She has a concussion, 2 cracked ribs, a hairline fracture in her left wrist." Cole waited. "None of those injuries are from tonight," the doctor said. The room went very still with Cole at the center of it. "Say that again." "The concussion is fresh. The ribs and the wrist are older injuries, partially healed, probably several weeks old at minimum." She held his eyes with the directness of someone who had said this before and understood the weight of saying it. "This is not the first time someone has hurt this woman. I need you to understand that clearly." "I understand it," Cole said. "Is she going to be safe?" the doctor asked. "I need to know that before I go back through those doors." Cole thought about the woman behind the doors, about the way she had held his hand in the mud, about "don't leave" said with nothing left to protect the asking. "Yes," he said, "she's going to be safe." The doctor held his eyes for one long moment that was also a question and also an assessment and also something close to gratitude. Then she nodded and went back through the doors. Cole sat back down. He thought about cracked ribs and a fractured wrist injuries that were weeks old that had been absorbed quietly into a body that had learned to keep going anyway. He thought about a woman who had described her husband's violence as weather, something you learn to predict and move around. He thought about what it said about a man that his pregnant wife had learned to describe him as weather. His phone buzzed. "Rook." He stepped outside. "Talk." "I've been pulling on the Derek Vane thread." Rook's voice had the specific, careful quality it got when he had found something that changed the shape of what they were dealing with. "Cole, he didn't just drive away tonight on impulse." "Tell me." "He cleared out their joint bank account 2 days ago. All of it. $47,000. Her name is on that account too, but it doesn't matter anymore because it's gone." A pause. "He planned this. Whatever happened on Route 9 tonight was not a man losing his temper. It was a man completing a plan he had been running for at least 48 hours. Cole stood in the wet parking lot and held the phone and looked at the hospital entrance. He thought about what it meant to strip a person of every financial resource before you left them in a ditch. Not just abandonment, preparation. The kind of systematic thinking that required you to look at your 8 months pregnant wife and decide in advance that she was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be considered. Where is he now? In the wind. Cars off every camera we can find past the Route 9 junction. He's moving, but we don't have a direction yet. Another pause. Cole, the deputy who was supposed to respond to Route 9 tonight. Deputy Reese. He called in a no-incident report. Cole was very still. She was in that ditch for 90 minutes, Rook said. Reese called it a no-incident before he even properly looked. The coal in Cole's chest got hotter and then went very cold. Keep digging on Vane, Cole said, and on Reese. I want to know what connects them. Already at it. And Rook, nobody leaves this hospital tonight. A pause with no argument in it. Understood. Cole put the phone in his pocket and walked back through the double doors and sat back down in the plastic chair and waited. 40 minutes later, a nurse appeared from behind the double doors. Older woman, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead with the expression of someone who had a question she wasn't sure she was authorized to ask. Mr. Harlan, Cole stood. The patient has been asking for you since we got her settled. The nurse lowered her voice. We told her you were still here and she stopped. Tried again. She cried. She tried to hide it, but she cried. I thought you should know before you went in. Cole nodded and followed her through the doors. The room had the particular contained quality of emergency stabilization done well. IV in Nora's left arm, a monitor attached to her belly tracking the baby's heartbeat with a rapid, steady drumming that filled the small space with something that seemed defiant in its consistency. a bandage over the cut above her eyebrow. The bruising on her jaw looked worse under hospital lights, more detailed and more honest, the way all damage looked under bright lights. She looked small in the bed. She looked like someone who had been carrying something enormous for years and had finally involuntarily been forced to set it down and did not quite know what to do with her hands. When she saw Cole, she exhaled. It was the most honest sound he had heard from a human being in a long time. "You stayed," she said. "I said I would." He pulled the chair to her bedside and sat. She looked at the chair. She looked at him. Then she said quietly, "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up in that ditch." "You're not in the ditch. You're in a bed and your daughter's heartbeat is on a monitor and it sounds like she's been practicing." Nora almost smiled. She put her hand on her belly. "She won't stop moving. She's been moving all night. I think she knows something happened." A pause. "I've been talking to her. I started doing that months ago when things got—" She stopped. "I talked to her so she knows my voice." "Smart," Cole said. "I told her we were going to be okay." Her voice was even, but something underneath it was working through something. "Even when I wasn't sure I told her that. I made her promises. And then I ended up in a ditch on a highway in the rain and I thought—" She pressed her lips together. "I thought this is where it ends, before she even gets here." "She's here," Cole said. "You both made it. Because you stopped." She looked at him with the directness that had been building in her, across the last several hours, the quality of someone who had decided to look at things fully rather than at an angle. "Why did you stop?" Cole looked at his hands, at the mud still under his fingernails, at the rain-dark denim of his jeans, at the hands of a man who had been to the other side of the world and come back changed in ways he was still occasionally discovering. "A long time ago," he said, "someone stopped for me. When I was 17 and I had nothing left and I was somewhere I should not have been by myself." He paused. "He sat in a chair beside my bed for 4 hours and he didn't have to do any of it. He didn't know me. There was no accounting by which it made sense for him to stay." Another pause. "I've been trying to justify that debt ever since." Nora was quiet for a moment. "Who was he?" "Man named Walt. He's gone now, but the debt isn't." The monitor kept its count. Lily's heartbeat uninterrupted and entirely indifferent to everything the adults in the room were working through. Nora looked at the ceiling for a moment and then back at Cole. "I have a degree in accounting," she said. It came out without obvious context. Cole waited. "Forensic accounting specifically. I spent 3 years doing it professionally before I met Derek." Her voice was flat in the way of someone reciting facts that had been processed past the point of surprise. "He knew that when we got married. He thought it was practical. And then somewhere in the middle of those 6 years, he decided I didn't understand things well enough to be involved in his business. He said it enough times in enough small ways that I started to believe it." She looked at her hands. "I haven't thought of myself as a person with a degree in forensic accounting in about 3 years. I've been someone who doesn't understand finance for 3 years." A pause. "I was good at it." "I know," Cole said. She looked at him. "You don't know me." "I know enough." He meant that. He had been reading people for long enough to trust what he read. And what he read in Nora Vane, underneath the exhaustion and the damage and the long, careful habits of a woman who had learned to make herself smaller, was someone whose mind was entirely intact. Someone who had been forced to bury it, but had not lost a single piece of it. He did not know yet why that would matter. He would. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, held up one finger to Nora, and stepped to the doorway. "Talk." "Cole." Rook's voice was quiet in the way he got when something had changed the dimensions of what they were dealing with. "Derek Vane is not small time." Cole was still. "He's connected to a man named Calloway. Runs product out of Atlanta through 4 counties east of here. Has been running for years. Derek was his Ridgewater County distributor." A pause. "He's been skimming, not a small amount, a significant amount. Calloway found out approximately 2 months ago." Cole waited. The deadline Derek was given to settle up, Rook said, was yesterday. Cole closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. One deliberate second in which everything Rook had just said rearranged itself into something coherent. "He wasn't just running from his wife," Cole said slowly. "He was running from Calloway. The account he cleaned out 2 days ago, the $47,000, that wasn't everything he took from Calloway. That was just what was liquid and accessible." Another pause that had something in it Cole could not yet name. "Cole, before he pushed her out of that car, he made sure she had nothing. He stripped her down before he left her. That is not a man panicking. That is a man executing." Cole stood in the doorway of Nora Vane's hospital room and looked at her. She was watching him. She could not hear what Rook was saying, but she was reading him the way she had been reading everything all night, with the peripheral attention of a woman who had spent years learning to track what was not being said. Keep pulling, Cole said quietly. I want to know who else is in this. And Rook, he lowered his voice further. What do you know about the sheriff of this county? A pause. Give me an hour. You've got 30 minutes. He put the phone away and went back to the chair. Nora looked at his face and said, tell me. He told her. Not all of it, not yet. He told her what Rook had found about Derek and Calloway, about the deadline, about the account. He watched her face as he talked. He watched it move through things in sequence, shock, then the particular horrible clarity of something confusing suddenly making sense. Then something quieter and more devastating underneath both of those, which was the confirmation of a fear she had been carrying for a long time. When he finished, the room was quiet for a moment. He planned it, she said. We believe so. He didn't leave me because he panicked. He left me because he had somewhere to be and I was, she stopped, her hand pressed flat against her belly. He was running from Calloway and he didn't want me in the car when he went wherever he was going. She looked at Cole directly. I wasn't an inconvenience tonight. I was a loose end. Cole said nothing. There was nothing to say that would be adequate. She looked down at her belly. He knew I was in that ditch, she said very quietly. He drove away and he knew. The monitor beeped its steady count. He won't hurt you again, Cole said. That I can promise you. She looked at him for a long moment with the expression of a woman who had been promised things before by men and had learned not to trust the promising. Then she said, you don't even know me. Doesn't matter, Cole said. You're in my circle now. She stared at him, and then she did something that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. She laughed, not with humor exactly, but with the particular startled quality of someone who has not laughed in so long that when it happens, it feels like something breaking open rather than something closing. A real laugh, a Nora Vane laugh. Your circle, she said. That's how it works for us. You needed help. We helped. There's no taking that back. She looked at him for a long time. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Outside the room in the hallway, Cole heard Rook's voice drop to the particular note it hit when something needed immediate attention. He stood, touched Nora's hand briefly, and stepped out. Rook was at the end of the corridor with his phone already in hand. Talk. Cole, Derek Vane is connected to Calloway's operation, but that's not the whole of it. Word I'm getting from two different directions is that Calloway's network runs through county infrastructure here. Not just around it, through it. Cole waited. Half the sheriff's department in Ridgewater County is on Calloway's payroll, Rook said. The other half is loyal to the first half. The silence that followed was the kind that had weight to it. The sheriff, Cole said. Sheriff Dale Grady. He's been the mechanism through which Calloway's distribution stayed protected in this county for 3 years. A pause. Cole, the deputy who called in a no incident on Route 9 tonight. He made a phone call before he filed anything. We think he called Grady, and we think Grady called Calloway. Cole stood in the hospital corridor and understood what that meant. Nora Vane had been in that ditch for 90 minutes on a night when the law enforcement system of Ridgewater County had known she was there and had decided not to act. Not from incompetence, from instruction. Nobody gets to this room, Cole said. I don't care who they send. Gage is in the lot, Patch is on the entrance, I'm in the hall. A pause. Cole, I think we're going to have company before the night is over. I know, Cole said. Let them come. He went back into the room. He sat down. He told Nora that the situation was more complicated than it appeared, and that they were staying the night and that she did not need to worry about the details right now. She looked at him with the expression of a woman who had been managed for 6 years and recognized management. Tell me all of it, she said. I'm not made of glass, and I stopped breaking a long time ago. So he told her all of it. She listened with the focused stillness of someone absorbing information they will need to use. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, There's a storage unit. Cole looked at her. About 6 months ago, Derek received a key in the mail from a property management company in Northfield. That's about 40 miles east of here. He took a large bag there twice that I know of. Heavy bag. She paused. I thought it might be something legitimate. An investment, maybe. I remember thinking that because the company was called Ridgeline Property, and I thought it sounded like real estate. She made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. He never explained it, and I learned not to ask. The name of the company, Cole said. Ridgeline Property. In Northfield, yes. Cole was already texting Rook. The reply came back in 90 seconds. Rook had a location. Cole looked at Nora. There's also a safety deposit box, she said as if she had been organizing her information while he was occupied. At Ridgewater Savings and Trust, my name is on the account too, which is how I was able to access it 8 months ago when Derek was away for a weekend. I used the spare key and I looked inside. Cole leaned forward slightly. I didn't understand it at the time, she said. There were documents, agreements, handwritten notes, numbers that didn't match any business I knew Derek to be running. multiple signatures. She looked at Cole steadily. One of them was very large and looping a signature you couldn't mistake for anyone else's. I didn't know whose it was then. She paused. But if what you've told me about the sheriff is accurate, I think I know now. Can you describe it? Cole asked. She described it. Cole texted Rook. He looked at Nora and said, is there anything else, anything at all? Even things that seemed unimportant at the time? She thought. He watched her think. Watched her go back through something she had been trying not to go back through for a long time, sorting through years of information she had absorbed without meaning to, because she had learned early that paying attention was a survival tool, even if she could never let Derek see that she was doing it. There was an argument, she said slowly. 3 weeks ago, Derek and Deputy Reese in Derek's office. The door was closed, but I was in the hallway and Derek raised his voice once. He didn't realize I was there. She looked at Cole. He said, you already signed it. You can't take it back. The room was very quiet. At the time, I thought it was about a business agreement. Derek was always making deals. She pressed her lips together. But if Reese was the connection between Derek and Grady, and if Derek was collecting signatures as insurance, he had something on Reese, Cole said. Something Reese signed. Something he could not walk back. Nora nodded slowly. Derek wasn't brave and he wasn't a fighter. The only way he ever protected himself was with paper, documents, agreements, records. He kept everything. She looked at Cole directly. He was terrified underneath all of it. He had been terrified for years. That was what all the control was about, really. He was terrified of losing control of everything, including me. Cole's phone buzzed. Rook. He stepped to the doorway. Storage unit in Norfield, Rook said without preamble. I'm outside it now. There's a duffel and a half of cash, Cole. Cobb hasn't counted, but it's significant. There's also a burner phone still charged. A pause that had something large in it. The last call made from that phone, I traced the number. Cole waited. It's registered to a shell company, but the shell connects to Ridgewater County Municipal Services. A pause. The sheriff's personal office line, Cole. Derek Vane had a direct burner connection to Sheriff Grady. Cole stood very still. Touch nothing, he said. Watch everything. Who knows you're there? Just us. Keep it that way. Cole's mind was running very fast through what he now knew. Callaway's distribution network. Derek skimming. A deadline missed. A burner phone connecting Derek directly to the sheriff. A safety deposit box with documents and signatures, including one that was large and looping and unmistakable. Rook, I need to know the shape of this. Not just the individual pieces, the whole shape. I think Derek was more than a distributor, Rook said slowly. I think he was their insurance. He collected signatures, agreements, documented everything, and he used that documentation to protect himself. As long as he had it, Callaway and Grady couldn't move against him. He was the only person who knew where all the bodies were buried figuratively, and he had paperwork to prove it. Until he started scamming, Cole said. Until he started scamming enough that the risk of the documentation outweighed the risk of getting rid of him. Rook paused. When Derek ran, everyone whose name was in that deposit box needed the documentation gone. That storage unit, the money, the phone, Derek was going to use all of it to run. He was going to take his insurance and disappear. Another pause. But someone got to his deadline before he could. Cole looked back at Nora through the door. She was watching him. Her hand was on her belly. He thought about a man who had stripped his wife's bank account before he left her in a ditch. He thought about the shape of that, not just cruelty, strategy. The coldest kind of strategy. The deposit box, Cole said. Rook, get to Ridgewater Savings and Trust tonight. Nora Vane is on the account. She has legal access. I don't care how you do it or what gray areas you navigate on the way. Get into that box and tell me everything that's in it. A pause. I know a man, Rook said. Cole put the phone away and went back into the room. He told Nora what Rook had found. The storage unit, the money, the burner phone. He watched her face as the shape of it became clear to her, the way it had become clear to him, not in a rush but in stages, each piece connecting to the next, with the particular horrible logic of something that had been designed to be complete. He left me there on purpose, she said when he finished. We believe so. Not just because it was slowing him down. Not just because he was running. She looked at her hands. Then she looked up. He left me there because he didn't need me anymore. Because if someone came looking for him and found me instead, that bought him time. She pressed her lips together. He used me as a distraction. He used Lily as a distraction. She wasn't even born yet, and he used her. Yes, Cole said. Nora was quiet for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were dry. Not because she wasn't feeling it. Cole could see she was feeling all of it, every atom. But she had made a decision in that silence, and the decision had rearranged her. They're not getting to her, she said. Not Callaway's people, not Derek, Not anyone. She looked at Cole with the absolute directness of someone who has moved past the point of performing strength and arrived at the real thing. What do we do? Cole looked at her. He thought about the first moment he had seen her, one arm stretched toward the headlights, reaching towards something she could not yet see but reaching anyway. We stay together, he said. We stay smart, and we make sure nobody gets close enough to hurt either of you again. She held his gaze. I don't have anything, she said. He took everything. I have literally nothing. You have a daughter coming, Cole said. And right now you have 19 men in and around this building who don't leave their own. He paused. You're one of ours now, Nora, whether you want to be or not. She stared at him. That's not how the rest of the world works, she said. No, Cole said, it's not. Outside in the corridor, Rook's voice in his earpiece changed register. Cole heard it and stood. Two men had appeared at the nurse's station at the end of the hall. Civilian clothes. But their eyes were moving the way no ordinary civilian's eyes move, door to door, exit to exit, measuring the dimensions of the space and the positions of everyone in it. Cole told Nora to stay in her bed and walked out into the corridor. He stopped 5 feet from the two men. Wrong floor, he said. The larger of the two men looked at him with the flat assessment of someone running a calculation. We're visiting a patient. No, you're not. Cole kept his voice level. You want to try again or save us both some time? A pause. We're looking for someone. I know who you're looking for, Cole said. She's not here. He watched the man's eyes move just briefly, just for half a second, to the closed door at the end of the corridor. Wrong room, too. The man looked at Cole, looked at Rook, who had positioned himself to the left, looked at Gage, who was at the right, ran his math. Calloway's going to want to talk to her, the man said. Calloway can want a lot of things, Cole said. My concern is the woman at the end of this hall who has never taken a cent from your employer and never hurt anyone in her life, and who is 8 months pregnant and is going to have her daughter in peace, regardless of what your employer wants. He took one step forward. Just one. Are we clear? The man held his gaze for a long moment. Then he stepped back, an exchange of looks with his companion. The silent calculation of two men experienced enough to know when the math had turned against them. Calloway won't let this go, the man said. I'm aware, Cole said. Tell him who you ran into tonight. The two men turned and walked to the elevator. Cole stood and watched them go. Rook appeared at his shoulder. They'll be back. I know, with more people. I know that too. Cole looked at the door of Nora's room. Call the others. 2 on the hospital at all times. We rotate every 4 hours. A pause. And Rook, find Tyler Voss. Rook was quiet for a moment. You mean Derek? I mean Derek, Cole said. Find him. The night deepened around the hospital. Cole returned to the room. He told Nora about the 2 visitors in the efficient, matter-of-fact way he delivered everything. She listened and did not ask him to soften it. How many? She said. 2, for now. For now, she repeated. She looked at Lily's heartbeat on the monitor, at the steady, relentless line of it. She has terrible timing, Nora said. She has her mother's timing, Cole said. She's arriving at the most complicated moment because that's the only kind of entrance she knows how to make. Nora looked at him. Then she laughed again. That startled, exhausted, utterly real laugh. Cole looked at the window, at the dark parking lot, and the rain still coming down, and the 19 bikes waiting in a row with the patience of things that had been built to endure. The night was not finished with them yet, not by a long distance. Part 2, The Trap. The clock on the wall of the Ridgewater County Hospital waiting room read 20 minutes past midnight when Sheriff Dale Grady walked through the front entrance. Cole saw him from across the lobby before Grady saw Cole, which was useful. He used those 3 or 4 seconds to read the man completely. Grady was tall, mid-60s, the kind of tall that had meant something when he was younger, and now was just height with the accumulated weight of 20 years of unchallenged authority pressing against the front of his uniform. He moved through the lobby entrance the way men move through spaces they believed were already theirs. He did not look around the way a person looked around when they genuinely did not know what they were walking into. He looked around the way a person looked when they wanted to appear to not know what they were walking into. He was performing a rival. Cole stood from his chair and crossed the lobby. Grady saw him coming and did his own assessment, the patch in the jacket, in the deliberate way Cole moved, and set his face into the expression of a man who was accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room and was making a rapid calculation about whether that remained true. Hell's Angels, he said. The question mark was barely present. Iron Hollow Charter, Cole said. He stopped 4 feet away, close enough to read everything. I'm Cole Harlan. I'm the captain. I found the woman you're here to see. Grady extended his hand. Cole shook it. The handshake told him things. Firm held a beat too long released with a slight upward pressure. The handshake of a man who used physical contact to establish hierarchy and did it automatically. I appreciate what you did, Grady said. Finding her. Getting her here. It was the right thing to do, Cole said. I'd like to see her. Get a statement while she's still fresh. She's sleeping, Cole said. Doctor's orders, no visitors until morning. Grady smiled, not warmly. I'm not a visitor. I'm the sheriff of this county. And I'm the man who's been sitting outside her door since we brought her in, Cole said pleasantly. The doctor said no visitors. I'm sure you understand medical protocols, Sheriff. We'll make sure you get a full statement in the morning. The smile on Grady's face thinned and then disappeared, and something underneath it came to the surface. The stillness of a man who had been crossed in a way he had not expected and was recalibrating. Mr. Harlan, Grady said, and his voice had dropped half a register into something with an edge underneath it. You're not from this county. No, Cole agreed. You don't have standing here. I have a woman in a hospital bed who found me before she found you, Cole said. That gives me a kind of standing that doesn't require a badge. He held Grady's gaze. We'll see you in the morning, Sheriff. The silence that followed lasted long enough to mean something. I'll be back, Grady said. We'll be here, Cole said. Grady held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Cole watched him go. He watched Grady's hand come out of his jacket pocket and go to his phone before the man had even cleared the automatic doors. Cole was already walking to the elevator. He called Rook on the way up. Sheriff just left. He was on his phone before he hit the parking lot. I want someone on his vehicle. Done, Rook said. Cole, I'm at the bank. We're in the box. Cole stopped. He heard Rook moving, the sound of paper. A pause that lasted long enough to mean something significant. Tell me, Cole said. It's not just the sheriff, Rook said. Cole, there are 12 names in here. Another pause. County officials, 2 state-level appointments, and his voice dropped further. A federal contractor. There's a name in here attached to federal project oversight for this region. Cole stood in the elevator on the way to the 4th floor and let that land. Derek wasn't just Callaway's distributor, Rook said slowly. He was collecting on all of them. Every person in this county and this state who ever took money from Callaway or signed something they shouldn't have. Derek documented every single transaction, every agreement, every payment. He built himself a wall of paper with 12 names on it, and he kept it in a box with his wife's name on the account. A pause. Probably thought that if anyone came for him, having Nora connected to it gave him another layer of protection. Cole thought about that, about using Nora as a layer of protection without her knowing, about the particular coldness of that. Get everything out of that box, Cole said. Photograph every page. Send copies to yourself to gauge to patch. Multiple copies, multiple locations. He paused. And Rook, the federal contractor. I need that name. Rook gave it to him. Cole got out of the elevator. He stood in the corridor for a moment and let the whole architecture of the night reorganize itself around what he now knew. 12 names, a federal contractor. Documents that connected people at county, state, and federal levels to Callaway's network. Derek Vane had not just been a distributor protecting himself against one man. He had been the insurance policy for an entire ecosystem. And when Derek decided to run, every single person on that list needed him gone, or needed the documents gone, or both. Cole walked back into room 412. Nora looked at his face and said immediately, what happened? He told her. He told her about the 12 names. He told her about the federal contractor. He watched her face absorb it in the way she absorbed everything now fully, and without flinching, letting it land at its actual size. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he was smarter than I thought. In one specific way, Cole said. He was keeping the documentation as a dead man's switch. As long as he had it, none of them could move against him. She looked at the monitor, at Lily's heartbeat. But when he started skimming enough, the mathematics changed. The risk of letting him keep breathing with those documents outweighed the protection the documents offered them. She paused. And when Derek realized that he stopped being someone with leverage and became someone with a problem. So he ran, Cole said. He ran. He took the money and he tried to get to the storage unit and She stopped. Something crossed her face. He got rid of me first. He cleaned out the account, he made sure I had nothing, and then he got rid of me before he went to pick up whatever was in that unit. She looked at Cole. Because he didn't want me in the car when he did it. Because I was, she pressed her lips together. I was a witness, a live witness with his name attached to a safety deposit box full of documentation. A pause. He didn't leave me there because I was slowing him down. He left me there because I was a liability. The room was very quiet. Yes, Cole said. He was fine with it, she said. Not asking, stating the way you stated something you were reading off a page with your own name on it. If I had bled out in that ditch, if Lily, she stopped. Her hand pressed hard against her belly. He was fine with it. Nora, don't. Her voice cracked on the word but did not break. Don't try to soften that. I need to see it clearly. I've spent 6 years not seeing clearly, and look where I am. She breathed once, slow and deliberate. He was fine with it. I know that now. Another breath. Now, what do we do about it? Cole looked at her. He had seen people come through things that should have broken them and come out the other side still standing and still oriented toward the future. It was something he respected more than almost anything else in the world. Nora Vane, 8 months pregnant, cracked ribs, everything she owned, stripped from a bank account 2 days ago, had just processed the information that her husband had knowingly left her to die. And her question was, what do we do about it? His phone buzzed, a number he did not recognize. He answered. The voice on the other end was not Rook, not anyone from the charter. Male, quiet, almost flat, with the particular measured quality of someone who spoke in sentences they had thought through completely before saying. Mr. Harlan, the voice said, I think it's time we talked about what's in that storage unit before this goes any further. For everyone's sake, including the woman's. Cole turned slightly away from Nora. Who is this? A pause. Someone with considerably more patience than my employer, but not unlimited patience. Another pause. You have something that belongs to us. We have something that may interest you. Think carefully about the next few hours, Mr. Harlan. After that, the choices get very limited for everyone involved. The line went dead. Cole lowered the phone. He stood with his back to Nora for exactly 3 seconds, letting his mind run through the implications at speed. A voice that spoke in careful sentences. Someone who presented himself as separate from the employer. Someone who had his personal number, which was not public information. He turned around. Nora was watching him with the expression of a woman who had decided she was going to look at everything directly. That wasn't good news. No, Cole said. Now we know where it's coming from. He stepped into the doorway and called Rook. The caller who just reached my personal number, Cole said. I need to know how they got it, and I need a cell tower trace. Working on it, Rook said. Cole, give me 10 minutes. Cole went back into the room and sat down. He looked at Nora. Tell me everything else you remember. Anything at all. Even things that seemed completely insignificant. She was quiet. He watched her go back through something she had been trying not to go back through, sorting through 6 years of careful observation she had been performing, invisibly pulling out everything she had filed away under the category of Derek's business and things I don't ask about. There was one more thing about the argument, she said. The one 3 weeks ago with Reese. I heard Derek say you already signed it. You can't take it back. She looked at Cole. Whatever Reese signed, Derek kept a copy. He kept copies of everything. And if Reese knew Derek was running, and if Reese knew the documentation might surface, Reese would need to make sure it didn't, Cole said. He would need to make sure I didn't, Nora said. If my name is on that deposit box account, I have legal access. I'm the only person outside Derek who could walk in there legitimately. Cole's phone buzzed. Rook, talk. The cell tower trace, Rook said. His voice was absolutely flat. Cole, the caller is not in Atlanta. Cole was very still. He's in Ridgewater County. He was here when he called you. He was here before we moved Nora, before we knew about the deposit box. A pause. He's been here, Cole. He's not reacting to us. He's been managing this situation from inside the county. The federal contractor, Cole said, has to be. He's the only name on that list with the clearance to get your personal number and the connections to know exactly how this county operates. Rook paused. He knew Derek was going to run. He knew about the documentation. He's been ahead of this from the beginning. Cole turned and looked at Nora through the door. She was watching him with the expression of someone who had already begun to understand that whatever he was being told had made things worse. He's not going to wait for us to figure out our next move, Cole said. No, Rook said. He's not. Cole, there's something else. I've been watching the hospital perimeter for the last 20 minutes. There are now 3 vehicles positioned around this building. None of them are the sheriff. None of them are the first pair who came to the nurse's station. Cole ran the numbers. 3 vehicles, 2 people per vehicle minimum, 6 people positioned at 3 points around a hospital in the middle of the night. That's not surveillance, Cole said. No, Rook said. That's containment. Cole stood in the doorway of Nora's room and thought fast. He thought about the man on the phone who had spoken in careful sentences and presented himself as someone with patience. He thought about 6 people positioned around a building at 1 in the morning. He thought about the 14 minutes until Rook had estimated the next check-in. We move her, Cole said. He went back in. We're changing rooms, he told Nora. He kept his voice matter-of-fact. Rook secured a room on the 4th floor an hour ago as a precaution. Different name on the registration. It has 2 exits and 1 entrance. Nora looked at him. Can I walk? You're going to have to. He looked at the monitor. Can you manage the IV yourself? She was already reaching for the monitor lead, examining the connector with the focused attention of someone for whom mechanical problems were simply problems to be solved. I've watched them attach and detach this thing 4 times tonight, she said. I can manage it. She looked at Cole. Time the contractions, if I have any. They've been irregular, but they've been happening. Cole stared at her. You've been having contractions. Braxton Hicks, probably. But she pulled the monitor lead loose with a small, careful motion. Standing still in this room is not going to help either of us. Cole went to the doorway. The corridor was clear. Rook was at the far end. Gage had appeared from somewhere. Both of them shifted into position without a word being spoken. They moved Nora to the 4th floor in 4 minutes. The room at the end of the corridor was smaller and quieter and had exactly the sight lines Rook had promised. A different nurse, young and clearly briefed, with enough information to convey urgency, without specifics, got the IV resettled and the monitor reattached. Lily's heartbeat came back on the screen steady and insistent, and Cole let himself take a breath. He stepped back into the corridor. His earpiece crackled. Gage. One of the perimeter vehicles is moving. North side car going east entrance. A man on foot heading for the east entrance of the ground floor. Cole processed this. One man, alone. Not the mass entry of people who were there to remove someone. One man going in alone to look. Let him enter, Cole said. Don't intercept. I want to know where he goes. Gage becked Cole. If he goes to her room, she's not in that room anymore, Cole said. Let him find that out himself. I want to see what he does when the room is empty. A pause. Then Gage, with something in his voice that was the charter equivalent of impressed. You want to see if he makes a call? And I want to know who he calls, Cole said. He waited. 4 minutes later, Gage's voice came back. He went to the room. Looked. Now he's in the corridor outside it with his phone out. A pause. Cole, he called someone. 2-minute call. Then he went back down. Which way did he go? Back to the east lot. He's in his vehicle, sitting. Cole thought about a man who went to an empty room and made a phone call. He thought about who you called when you went to an empty room. You called the person who told you where to go in the first place. He called Rook. The man who just went to Nora's old room on the 3rd floor, Cole said. He made a phone call from the corridor outside it. Can you get the outgoing number? Already working it, Rook said. A pause. Cole, the number he called, it goes to the same cell cluster as the call you received from the contractor 40 minutes ago. Cole was very still. The contractor had sent the man to check the room. The man had found the room empty and reported back, which meant the contractor now knew they had moved Nora, which meant the patience in that careful voice was about to run out. How long until the FBI, Cole said. Rook paused. If I call Harwick right now and she moves immediately 45 minutes, maybe 40. Then we have 40 minutes, Cole said. Call Harwick. Right now. He went back into the room. Nora read his face with the accuracy she had been developing across the entire night. They know we moved. We think so. Then they'll move too. Yes. She absorbed this with the steady forward-looking quality that had been building in her since the moment he had told her about the deposit box. Not calm exactly. Something harder than calm. Something that had been heated and compressed and come out the other side as something with genuine weight to it. The deposit box documents, she said, the 12 names, the financial structures. She looked at Cole directly. I told you I have a degree in forensic accounting. He waited. I can read those documents, she said. Not just identify that the signatures are there. I can explain exactly what every financial arrangement was doing, how the money moved, what the shell companies were constructed to hide. I spent 3 years doing exactly that kind of work professionally. She held his gaze. If your FBI agent needs someone who can explain the financial architecture of what Derek built, I can do that. I want to do that. Cole looked at her. He thought about 18 months of a federal case that kept getting buried every time it approached Callaway's financial infrastructure. He thought about shell companies and phantom contracts designed to be opaque to everyone except people specifically trained to see through them. He thought about a forensic accountant who had been made to forget she was a forensic accountant. He thought about the particular kind of strategic cruelty that required looking at a woman's most formidable skill and spending 6 years burying it. You've been the answer to this the whole time, he said. I know, she said quietly. And he knew it too. That's why he did what he did for 6 years. He wasn't just controlling me. He was protecting himself from what I could do if I ever decided to do it. She looked at the monitor, at Lily's heartbeat. Well, she said, I've decided. Before Cole could respond, Patch's voice hit his earpiece with the particular flatness that meant something had already changed. East entrance, ground floor, 4 men moving fast from 2 directions. Cole, this is coordinated. Cole was at the door before Patch finished the sentence. He looked back at Nora. 3 knocks. My voice. Nothing else opens that door. She had heard this before. 3 knocks. Your voice. She held his eyes for one moment. Go. He went. The corridor outside the room on the east wing of the 4th floor was 20 yards of fluorescent light and closed doors in the specific institutional quiet of a hospital at 2 in the morning. Cole came off the stairwell into it and felt the air change immediately, the pressure shift of too many people with bad intentions entering a space. Rook was at the far end. Gage had come up from below, 2 others from their positions along the building. The elevator opened. 3 men came out moving with the flat, purposeful efficiency of people who had done this kind of work many times before and had no particular concern about being observed. Simultaneously, a door at the end of the corridor opened and 2 more came through from the opposite stairwell. Coordinated. Both approaches covered simultaneously. Someone had been in this building earlier tonight specifically to learn its layout. The man from the empty room. He had not just been looking for Nora, he had been conducting reconnaissance. The lead man was large in the functional way, the way that came from years of specific work rather than effort. He looked at Cole and did not look surprised. That was the tell. He had planned for resistance. He had expected it. This was not a warning visit or a negotiation. This was the conclusion of the patience in the careful voice. Step aside, the lead man said. I've had a long night, Cole said. Let's get this done. What happened in the next 35 seconds was not clean and not graceful and was not something Cole would have designed if he had been given choices. But it was effective. When it was over, 5 men were on the floor and 1 was against the wall, and Gage had a cut above his ear that was producing more blood than the injury deserved, and Cole had 2 ribs that were going to make the next several weeks of breathing a conscious, deliberate act. A nurse appeared at the corridor's end and stopped. Call security, Cole said. His voice was entirely level. Tell them to call the FBI. There are federal agents en route to this building. Give them this floor. She nodded and was gone. Patch managed the men on the floor with the efficiency of a man who kept zip ties in his jacket as a routine matter rather than a precaution. Cole stood over the lead man and looked at him at the decision-making that had brought him to a maternity floor at 2 in the morning to silence a pregnant woman, and felt the rage that had been stored since the embankment on Route 9 move through him one more time and then go somewhere permanent and cold. He walked back to room 412. 3 knocks. Cole. The lock clicked. She had the chair under the handle and moved it herself. She looked at the way he was standing, the careful breath, the sideways adjustment. You're hurt. I'm inconvenienced. Those are not the same. Sit down, Nora. She sat, but she kept watching him. Handled, he said. Harwick's people are inbound, approximately 30 minutes. He sat down carefully and managed his expression. The contractor sent those men. He knows we moved you. He knows we have the documents. He looked at her steadily. He's going to try to run when he sees the FBI vehicles. Can they get him? If Rook's trace on the cell tower was accurate, he's somewhere in the county right now. The FBI has resources in this county we don't. He paused. Harwick's been building toward this for 18 months. She'll know what to do with what we've given her. Nora nodded, then Derek. Cole had been holding that at the edge of the conversation. Patch reported a vehicle entering the east lot about 50 minutes ago, before the others arrived. He held her gaze. It was Derek. The stillness lasted 3 seconds. Then something moved through her in a rapid sequence. Surprise. Something that was not quite hope and not quite fear, but contained elements of both. Then something colder and more settled underneath everything. He came back for the documents, she said. We believe so. He had 2 men with him hired protection, not Calloway's people. He hired them separately, which means he was already running from Calloway before he arrived here. Cole paused. Gage and Patch intercepted him in the lot before he could enter the building. He's downstairs. When Harwick arrives, he'll be transferred to federal custody. He didn't come back for me, she said. No? She nodded once, slow. The nod of someone having a thing confirmed that they already knew and had already processed but needed to hear said clearly and plainly in a room with a witness in order for the door to close completely on it. I knew that when you said his name, she said. My first thought wasn't maybe he changed his mind. My first thought was, what does he need? She looked at her hands. That's 6 years finally working in a useful direction. Cole thought about the woman on Route 9 who had stood in the rain for 30 seconds watching taillights that were not going to turn around. He thought about how far she had traveled since that particular moment. He asked about you, Cole said. She looked up. When Gage and Patch brought him in, he asked if you were all right. Cole held her gaze. I told him you were not his concern, that he was going to cooperate fully with the FBI, and that he was not going to approach you or Lily in any form for the rest of his life. He paused. He didn't argue. Something in Nora exhaled that was not quite sound. Good, she said softly. She looked at the monitor, at the steady drumming line of Lily's heartbeat. I want to talk to your FBI agent, she said. When she gets here, I want to explain every document in that deposit box. I want to show them exactly how the money moved and what each of those signatures authorized. I want to walk them through the entire financial structure that Derek built. She looked at Cole. He spent 6 years making me believe I couldn't do that. I want to spend the next however many hours proving exactly what I can do. Cole looked at her. He was going to say something. He was going to say something about what it meant and what she had done and what the night had cost her and what she was worth. But before he could find the right words, his earpiece crackled and Gage's voice came through with the specific tightness that meant something was happening right now. Vehicle in the north lot, sitting for 15 minutes, rental plates, Atlanta. Cole stood. The contractor, Rook's voice came in immediately. Cole, if those plates are Atlanta, he's watching the building, watching for the FBI. When he sees the vehicles, he'll run, Cole said. How far is Harwick? 22 minutes, Rook said. Maybe 20. Cole looked at Nora. He looked at the door. He looked at the window in the parking lot 4 floors below. 20 minutes. He sat back down. He folded his hands. He was going to wait. The blue and red light came through the window at 19 minutes and 40 seconds, which Cole noted because he had been counting. Multiple vehicles. The controlled urgency of federal response arriving with a sense of purpose. Cole went to the window and watched Gage intercept an agent at the lot edge and exchange words and step aside. His phone buzzed. Harwick, we're in the building. Your man cleared us. Where are you? 4th floor, room 412, 6 individuals secured in the east corridor. Derek Vane is in the ground floor east lot. He'll cooperate. A pause. There's a rental vehicle in the north lot Atlanta plates. Your federal contractor. A brief silence. We saw it. It moved when our vehicles arrived heading south on the county road. We have a unit on it. Another pause. Cole, is the woman stable? She's more than stable, Cole said. Get up here. He put the phone away and looked at Nora. She's here, he said. Nora straightened against the pillows, not performing composure, finding it, pulling it up from somewhere that had been growing steadily more solid across the whole long night. She smoothed the hospital blanket with both hands, a small automatic gesture the kind a person made when they were gathering themselves. The night was almost done. Almost. Part 3, The Reckoning. Agent Sloan Harwick was mid-40s with the bearing of someone for whom difficult spaces had become simply her natural environment over the course of a career that had required her to be present in many of them. She came into room 412 with the economical movement of a person who did not waste motion and assessed Cole and then Nora, and then the room with a rapid, quiet precision she kept entirely off her face. Ms. Vane, she said. She pulled a chair to the side of the bed and sat deliberately bringing herself to Nora's level rather than standing over her. I'm Agent Harwick with the FBI. I want to start by telling you that you are safe. What you tell me tonight stays entirely within federal jurisdiction. Sheriff Grady's department has no involvement in this conversation whatsoever. Nora looked at her directly. Where is Grady right now? Being taken into custody at his residence as we speak. Harwick's voice was measured. Deputy Reese was brought in approximately 20 minutes ago. Nora closed her eyes briefly. Ms. Vane, Harwick leaned forward slightly. I understand that what I'm about to ask is a significant additional demand on a night that has already asked more of you than anyone should be asked to give. But I need to tell you something clearly. She paused. The documents from the safety deposit box are extraordinarily valuable to this investigation, but they're written in a financial language designed specifically to be opaque. Shell companies layered contracts, payment routing, through multiple jurisdictions and multiple levels of deniability. My forensic accounting team is in Atlanta, days away from being useful to this case. Another pause. Cole tells me you have a background in this specific kind of analysis. Nora glanced at Cole, then back at Harwick. Forensic accounting, degree in 3 years of professional practice. Can you read what's in those documents? A silence, not long. Yes, Nora said. I can read them. Harwick looked at her for a moment with the expression of someone who has been working towards something for 18 months and has just been handed the piece that makes the whole structure complete. Then she opened the folder she had brought and placed the first copied document on the bed tray in front of Nora. Nora looked at it. Her eyes moved across the columns and structures with the specific focused quality of someone returning to familiar territory after a long enforced absence. Not hesitant, certain. The way a musician picked up an instrument they had not touched in years and found that the knowledge was still there, exactly where they had left it waiting. This is a management fee arrangement, she said, but no real service is being rendered. The company receiving the fee is a shell. She pointed to a specific line. This routing number connects to a secondary entity that appears nowhere else in this document. That's the first layer. There will be at least two more in the subsequent pages. She turned the page. And here, the consulting contract. The rates are benchmarked to legitimate market rates, which is how it survived any surface-level audit. But the deliverables are defined in language that cannot be measured or verified. That's standard practice for this kind of construction. The money goes in as a legitimate contract payment and comes out as something else entirely on the other end. Harwick was writing. I can walk you through all of it, Nora said. Every structure, every shell, every routed payment. I can tell you what each signature authorized and what each person received and how it was hidden. She looked at the agent. I want to do this. I have wanted to understand what Derek was doing for 6 years, and I have never been allowed to look at it directly. She paused. Well, I'm looking at it now. Harwick looked at Cole. Cole said nothing. He stood and moved to the doorway where he could see both the corridor and the room, and he watched Nora Vane work. She was extraordinary. He had suspected it from the way she had talked about her daughter. He had suspected it from the way she had sorted through 6 years of peripheral observation and pulled out the specific details that mattered. He had suspected it from the way she had looked at the monitor leads and figured out how to remove them herself. But watching her move through the financial documents was something else. Something that confirmed what Derek Vane had understood and feared for 6 years. She was dangerous to him in the most specific way a person could be dangerous. Not physically, intellectually. The mind he had spent 6 years carefully burying was the mind that was going to dismantle everything he had built to protect himself. Cole thought about Walt Deering. He thought about debts. He thought about what it meant to stop for the person in the ditch when the stopping led here to this room, to this moment, to a woman in a hospital bed at 2:30 in the morning, taking apart the architecture of her own victimization with the professional precision of someone who had been trained to do exactly this. Then Nora's hand moved. Not the slow circles of the thinking gesture. A different pressure, harder and lower and more specific. Cole was at her side in 4 steps. Contraction, she said through her teeth. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were focused on something entirely internal. How far apart? 3rd one since we moved rooms. She breathed out through her nose in the long, controlled exhale of someone managing something that required the whole of her attention. They're real. The exhale continued. Slowly, the muscle in her jaw released a fraction. She has the worst possible timing. She waited until it was safe, Cole said. That's not bad timing. That's judgment. Nora laughed. Briefly, genuinely, through the tail end of the contraction, the startled and exhausted and utterly unguarded kind of laugh that arrived when a person was surprised into it by something they had not seen coming. A real laugh, a Nora Vane laugh. Harwick stepped to the door and called for the nurse. The room reorganized itself, more equipment, a second nurse. The delivery team paged from 1 floor below, arriving with the efficient calm of people who had been trained for exactly this and had done it many times. Harwick stepped back and caught Cole's eye across the controlled activity with the expression of someone who had been in complicated situations for long enough to recognize when one had exceeded its original parameters. Cole stayed in his corner, out of the way, not doing anything, simply occupying a fixed point in the room so another person knew where the solid ground was. Through the door, he could hear the organized movement of the federal operation unfolding through the floors below. The processing, the transfers, the particular controlled machinery of an investigation that had just received the 18 months of missing pieces it had been working toward. He heard Grady's name. He heard Reese's. He heard the name of the federal contractor, spoken in the clipped, factual shorthand of agents relaying information, followed by a note that the man had been apprehended on the county road east of town before he reached the highway. He filed it away. Right now, the only room that mattered was this one. The contractions came faster. 12 minutes between the first and second, 9 between the second and third. The nurses moved with the calm efficiency of people who had done this many times in rooms with less equipment and more urgency. Harwick had stepped into the corridor, but stayed close, one ear on the room, one on the radio in her hand. 41 minutes after the first real contraction, Lily Vane arrived. She did not arrive quietly. She arrived the way Nora had described her all night, with absolute conviction and no uncertainty whatsoever about her right to be in the world, with a voice that immediately and completely occupied every corner of the room it entered. The nurse placed her on Nora's chest, and the sound Nora made was something Cole did not have a category for. Something that was not a word and not a cry and not a laugh, but contained all three in proportions that could only exist in a moment exactly like this one. The full unguarded depth of it. Love that did not ask permission and did not apologize for its size. Cole looked at the wall. He let it through, quietly and privately, the way he had learned to let through things that got past the architecture. He stood with it for exactly as long as he needed to, and then he put it somewhere solid where it would keep. After a while, Nora said his name. He turned back. She was holding Lily with both hands propped on her chest, and she looked like she had been through a war, which she had, and she also looked more purely alive than anyone Cole had seen in a very long time. Lily's face was red and definite and already showing the particular set of the jaw that Nora had described all night. Tiny fists pressed against her mother's collarbone, already prepared apparently for whatever came next. "Come here," Nora said. Cole crossed the room. He looked down at Lily. He did not have the specific vocabulary for newborns for their weight or their developmental markers or the clinical details. What he saw was a person who had arrived intact and furious and certain who had kept her rhythm steady through the worst night of her mother's life and was now here exactly as promised fighting. "She looks ready," he said. "She comes from a long line of women who got left behind and got back up," Nora said. And then she paused and something shifted in her voice into a register he had not heard from her before, something that had been accumulating across the whole night and had found its moment, and a shorter line of men who knew when to stop. Cole looked at her. "Thank you," she said. He shook his head slightly. He did not have words adequate to what he wanted to say. That she had done this, that she had held herself together through a night that would have unmade most people, that she had remembered the storage unit and the property management company and the deposit box and the argument and the routing number on the first document Harwick had shown her, that everything that had kept her alive in the ditch and in this room and through every hour of this night had come from inside her and nowhere else. "You did all of this," he said. "We did all of this," she said. "Don't minimize your half." Agent Harwick appeared in the doorway. She looked at Nora and Lily in the room and allowed herself briefly and privately something in the territory of a smile. "Grady is in custody," she said quietly. "Reese was brought in an hour ago. Derek Vane has been transferred to federal holding. He's indicated full cooperation." A pause. "The contractor was apprehended on the county road east of town 6 minutes before our vehicles arrived." She looked at Nora specifically. "No one connected to Callaway's operation or to any of the 12 names in those documents has any avenue of access to you or to your daughter. That is finished tonight." Nora looked down at Lily. She breathed. One long, deliberate breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and Cole watched something leave her body in that exhale. Not all of it. You could not move 6 years of something in a single breath, but enough. Enough to make room for what was standing directly in front of her. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." Harwick looked at Cole. One more thing in her expression. The professional acknowledgement of a woman who had been working towards something for 18 months and had arrived at it by a road she had not anticipated. The documents Cole, the financial structures Nora identified, between her testimony and the burner phone records and the physical evidence from the storage unit, we have what we've been missing. A pause. "Callaway's network, all 12 names, will have the indictments within 72 hours. Cole nodded. Harwick withdrew. The room settled into the quiet of early morning. The monitor continued its count. Lily slept against her mother's chest with the completeness of someone who had been planning this particular sleep for 8 months and intended to do it properly. Cole sat back down in the chair beside the bed. Nora looked at him across the top of Lily's head with the expression of someone who has come through something real and is still processing the fact of having come through it. "She's going to ask about this someday," she said. "About how she was born, about that night. What will you tell her?" Nora thought about it with the careful deliberateness she brought to everything important. "I'll tell her that her mother fell in a ditch on a highway in the rain," she said, "and that a group of men on motorcycles stopped when everyone else kept driving. And that the lesson is stop for the people in the ditch, because you never know how much one stop can change." She paused. "And that her great-grandmother Lily was right about who she was all along. Her mother just needed some time to find her way back to it." Cole looked at her. She looked back. There was nothing more that needed to be said. The kind of understanding that accumulated between people who had stood in the same darkness at the same time and come out the other side together did not require language. It simply lived in the space between them, solid and real and not going anywhere. Cole stayed until Nora slept, until Lily slept against her mother's chest, until the room had settled into the deep quiet of a thing completed and the activity below had organized itself into the long procedural work of what came after. Then he went downstairs. He sat in a plastic chair in the waiting room and drank coffee that had been hot once and watched the pale line of dawn begin at the eastern edge of the parking lot, the particular thin gray gold light of a Montana morning that had decided to show up regardless of everything that had happened during the night. Rook came and sat across from him. They did not say anything for a long time. They were men who had ridden together long enough that silence was a language they were comfortable in. Then Rook said, "She's going to be all right." "Yes," Cole said, "she is." 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that was cold and bright with the particular clarity that followed a long autumn rain, Nora Vane walked out of Ridgewater County Hospital, carrying Lily in a car seat with a federal attorney beside her and a victim advocacy representative on her other side, and the knowledge that she was walking into a witness cooperation arrangement in a federal case in a year of work that would eventually bring down not just Callaway's operation, but 4 county officials, 2 state-level appointments, 1 federal contractor who had believed his clearances made him untouchable, and 1 very corrupt sheriff who had thought the same thing for considerably longer. She was walking toward all of that. She was not looking back. Cole was at the exit. He had not told anyone he would be there. He was simply there the way he had been there all night, not requiring acknowledgement or recognition, just occupying a position that needed someone in it. Nora stopped in front of him. Lily was asleep in the car seat, her small fists still clenched in the way she had arrived already, apparently dreaming about whatever it was that newborns dreamed about when they had entered the world fighting and intended to continue. "She's going to be the most stubborn person in any room she ever walks into," Nora said. "Good," Cole said. She looked at him with the directness that had been building in her since the ditch fully developed, now unguarded and steady. There was something she was working out how to say, and she was taking her time with it in the way she took her time with everything that mattered. "Will you check in?" as she said. "Not every week, not anything like an obligation, just sometimes, when you're passing through the county." "Yeah," Cole said. "I'll check in." She nodded. She picked up Lily's car seat, and she walked through the door into the morning. Cole stood at the entrance and watched her go, not because he was waiting for her to turn back, because some exits deserve to be witnessed, because some people had earned the right to have someone standing there when they walked away into the life they had built for themselves out of the wreckage of what had been done to them, someone who could see the full distance they had traveled from where they started. He watched her until she reached the car, until she was inside, until the car moved. Then he turned and walked back through the parking lot to where the Iron Hollow Charter was waiting. 19 bikes in a row, engines off, men who had been there through the whole long night and had not needed to be asked and would not have accepted thanks even if it had been offered. He stood at his bike. He put on his helmet. He looked at the hospital entrance one more time. Nora was gone, already moving into what came next. He thought about Lily's fist, about the heartbeat that had kept its count through the whole long night, regardless of everything else that was happening. About a forensic accountant who had been made to forget she was a forensic accountant and had remembered at exactly the moment it mattered most. He thought about Walt Deering sitting in a chair in Bozeman in 1998 and what those 4 hours had become over the subsequent decades. The compound interest of a single act of staying. The debt that did not expire and the chain of payment it set in motion. He threw his leg over to the bike and started the engine. One by one in the order they always went, 19 engines answered. The sound built from a murmur into something that filled the whole cold, bright morning with its particular voice, not loud for the sake of loudness, but full in the way that things were full when they were exactly what they were and had no apology for it. Cole pulled out of the lot. The Charter fell in behind him. The road opened ahead the way it always did, long and honest and indifferent to everything except the fact of forward motion. 2 years later in October, when the sky over Montana had the quality of something washed clean by a season of rain and was now presenting its best version of itself, a car slowed on Route 9 and pulled carefully to the shoulder. The door opened. Nora stepped out. The air was cold and smelled of pine and dry grass and the particular sharpness of high country autumn. She unstrapped Lily from the back seat and lifted her out, 2 years old now, with legs that wanted to go in 3 directions simultaneously and a jaw already set with the hereditary stubbornness that had kept her mother alive in this ditch 2 years ago, on a night exactly like this one in its weather, if in nothing else. They stood at the edge of the embankment, at the place where the gravel shoulder dropped away into the shallow ditch that ran along the side of the highway. It looked ordinary in the afternoon light, just a ditch, just a piece of road, the kind of thing you passed 1,000 times without noticing that it existed. Nora set Lily down on the gravel and crouched beside her. She placed a small bunch of wildflowers at the edge of the embankment, not for show, not for photographs or social media or anyone else's benefit. No one was watching except the trees in the sky and a 2-year-old daughter who was learning moment by moment what kind of person her mother was and intended to be. Lily looked at the flowers, then at the ditch, then at her mother with the grave seriousness she brought to things that seemed to her to require explanation. Mama, why flowers? Nora straightened. She took Lily's hand in hers, small and warm, and absolutely certain of its grip. For the men who stopped, here, baby girl. She looked down the long, empty highway in both directions. A long time ago, some men were riding on this road at night in the rain, and they stopped when they didn't have to. And because they stopped, you're here. And I'm here. She squeezed the small hand. So we come back and we remember them. And we learn from what they did. Lily thought about this with the seriousness she brought to important things. What do we learn? Nora looked at her daughter, at the set of that jaw and the alertness of those eyes, and the complete 2-year-old certainty that the world made sense and would continue to make sense if she just kept asking the right questions about it. That you stop, Nora said. When you see someone who needs help, you stop. Even when it's raining, even when it's late, even when stopping doesn't make obvious sense by any normal accounting. She paused. Because you never know how much one stop can change. For the person in the ditch, for yourself, for the daughter you're going to have someday who will stand here and learn the lesson from you. Lily considered this. Okay, she said, with the finality of someone who has understood something and filed it permanently. They walked back to the car. Nora lifted Lily into her seat and strapped her in, and then stood for a moment with the door open looking out at Route 9, at the long straight road that ran through the middle of everything that had happened, at the ordinary gravel and the ordinary ditch and the extraordinary nothing that it looked like in the daylight. She thought about Cole Harlan, somewhere on a road the way he was always somewhere on a road. She thought about a man who had learned at 17 what it meant to have someone stay, and who had been paying that forward across 26 years in ways he could not predict or control or track. She thought about Lily, whose first word had been more, and whose second word had been why, and who was going to ask both of those words of the world for the rest of her life, and was not going to stop asking until she got answers she found satisfactory. She thought about a deposit box that had sat in a bank in Ridgewater County, with her name on the account containing the documentation that had brought down 12 people who had believed themselves beyond reach. She thought about the routing number on the first document Harwick had shown her, and the shell company behind it in the 3 additional layers beneath that, and the way the money had moved through all of them in a path that looked random until you knew how to follow it. She thought about the morning she had walked into a law firm in Missoula and been offered a senior position, doing the work she had been trained to do, and the particular feeling of that morning, which she would not be able to describe to anyone who had not also been told for 6 years that they could not do the thing they were now being invited to do at a senior level. She got in the car. She drove forward. On a highway in another part of Montana on an afternoon in the same October, Cole Harlan rode at the front of the Iron Hollow chart the way he always rode. The road ahead was long and honest and indifferent to everything except the fact of forward motion. The engines were loud and the air was cold, and the sky was the particular blue that only appeared in Montana in October, the blue that seemed to go further back than sky normally went, as if there was more of it than usual. He did not know that on a stretch of Route 9 200 miles south, a woman and her 2-year-old daughter were standing at the edge of a ditch with wildflowers. He did not need to know. Some things you did because they were right, and the rightness of them carried forward in ways you could not track and were not meant to track. The debt passed on, the stop became a story, the story became a lesson, the lesson became a life. The life became a daughter who learned at 2 years old that you stopped for the people in the ditch and who would carry that forward into wherever she went and whoever she became and whatever she did, with the extraordinary, ordinary fact of her being here. Cole rode. The charter rode behind him. The road opened up ahead the way it always did, the way it had always done, the way it would continue to do for as long as there were people willing to ride into it without looking away. Voiceover, Cole Harlan, in the low, unhurried voice of a man who has thought carefully about what he wants to say and has decided to say only what is true. People ask why a man stops for a stranger on a midnight highway, why he gets off his bike in the rain, why he stays through a long night in a hospital for someone he does not know and has no reason to protect beyond the fact of her needing protection. The honest answer is simple. Because someone stopped for me once. When I was 17 and I had nothing left and I was in a room in Bozeman where I should not have been alone. He sat in a chair beside my bed for 4 hours and he did not have to do any of it. He did not know me. There was no accounting by which it made sense for him to stay. He just stayed. And in staying, he told me something that no amount of words could have told me, which was that I was worth staying for. I have been trying to justify that debt for 26 years. I do not think I will finish justifying it in my lifetime. I think that is the nature of some debts. They do not want to be paid off. They want to be paid forward. They want to move through the world and find the next person in the next ditch and the next person after that, generation after generation, a chain of stopped bikes on rainy highways that goes back further than any one person can see and reaches further forward than any one person can imagine. That is not heroism. That is just how it works. You stop. You stay. You do not leave your own. And your own, the most important part, your own, is anyone who needs you badly enough to reach toward the light. The road, the engines, forward,